Welcome to Flight Path, a brand new podcast from Tern's R&D exec team. Each week, we invite you into the cockpit for insider's look at our latest launches, current projects, and upcoming innovations. We're so excited to have you on this journey, so let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to the Flight Path podcast. As always, we've got another great episode coming your way, and the obligatory, if this is your first time listening, or maybe you've been listening to all of them, but you haven't clicked that subscribe button, go ahead and do that. It's fun for us to watch the number of subscribes go up every week. It's like kind of still a little surprising that people are like actually watching this and listening to it and adding comments, and so we love to see that. So feel free to subscribe on whatever, whether it's YouTube or Spotify, wherever you listen to this, let us know and drop a comment if you have questions. So now that we've got that out of the way, Brad, Molly, pretty exciting week this week. How's everybody doing? Maybe kick off with how's your week, Brad? We'll start with you.
Mine is great. I just have a quick question. Did you introduce yourself, David? Do people know who you are? Or did we just zoom right past that?
We just zoomed past, So I'm David, CEO and co-founder here at Tern, and you can tell it's Friday afternoon. Forgot the literally first part of the script, which is introductions. I did the subscribe thing, Brad. What more do you want from me, right?
Literally nothing else. Perfect. The most important thing is good. Everything you say, people will know exactly who you are.
Perfect.
All right. Anyways, I'm Brad, by the way, head of design at Tern. My week has been great. It's been a lot of fun. My main focus this week has been digging deeper into groups and to really start to pull apart some of the complexity. And I guess just to be super specific, the thing I'm thinking about is how do we lay around this idea of multiple bookings for an activity or a package for group trips while not making Tern more complicated for a trip where you don't have to deal with that and you're just planning a trip. You have one reservation per activity, and how do we make that stuff work, make it work at scale, and make sure it's as simple and streamlined as possible. I'll describe that as fun for the week, but it's really a lot of trying a lot of different options, throwing a lot of things away when you run into ooh, this isn't going to work out. So it's kind of the design process at work, but yeah, it's been really fun to dig in.
Yeah, that's it's we did the webinar, right, with the big groups unveiling. It's here's the kind of beautiful high level, but then even in the chat, right, we saw a million questions about the details, and that's what matters, right? Makes the feature, but it is a slog, if you will, I'd imagine, to kind of get through that and get down a rabbit hole of no, this breaks and all these kind of use cases. So fun times indeed. Molly, how's your week been?
Well, as you guys know, I've had a bit of a rough week. Over the weekend, my daughter got sick, and she got two of her babysitters sick as well. And I bragged to my husband that I hadn't gotten sick in 3 years, and I guess I was just immune to all sicknesses. And then I got sick. So I was okay, Monday and Tuesday, and then just death was coming for me Wednesday, Thursday. I'm doing a little bit better today. It was still a really exciting week, though. We got to start planning email collaboration, which will be a really fun one. So when you're working on a trip together as an advisor, an agency admin, or what have you, VA, you'll be able to actually read all of the emails associated with the trip, send emails, even if you're not the trip owner. And it's actually a pretty complicated one with some of the ways that we integrate directly with people's inboxes. So there's a lot to unpack and talk through with engineering there about how we're thinking about implications on the product and design side. And then we had a really fun launch. So there's a lot of testing for a new commission tracking dashboard for advisors and agents, which will be really fun to talk about a little bit later in the webinar.
Wow. Even with the sickness, still such a big week. And really, I know a lot of the conversations we had, even on the agency side and talking to individual advisors, that email collaboration is going to be such a game changer, building on the direct integration that we have that's really unique in the space. And then figuring out how do you actually make that collaborative is going to be really, really powerful and continue to kind of extend this collaboration in a way that nobody else is doing, and I think really replicates the way that travel actually works. It's a team sport to plan a lot of this. So my week was really good. I'm like also a little kind of going into the weekend a little more tired. I was in Las Vegas Sunday, Monday, and then came back Tuesday evening for kind of around the Virtuoso Travel Week. And that was really fun, just meeting with a lot of advisors and agency owners that we've been working with. And it's always kind of like a fun milestone to go to these events that we went to last year. And we actually presented at Virtuoso Travel Week last year, and kind of we're like, oh, like, someday, like, we imagine that we'll have like an advisor product that will just like kind of flow into the agency product, and we'll get rid of all the manual data entry. And here we are 12 months later, having launched it with over 100 agencies using the product. And that was really kind of a fun full circle moment. But it's also was kind of like crazy how global Tern is. Like, I don't think about Tern as global. We were in like the food court in this hotel, and this gentleman like runs up to us and he's like, I'm so excited. Like, we're using Tern. Like, my agency in the Middle East just launched it. And I was like, they're in Dubai. I was just like, that is so cool. That's even with relatively limited kind of like international outreach, people are finding Tern and starting to use it. And it sounds like it's going really well. So that was a cool highlight of the week. And then back in kind of the home office here, Wednesday through Friday, but it's just like, I don't know, Vegas takes it out of you. So it's been a little bit kind of playing catching up on all the emails, and yeah, it's been a week. But with that, let's go ahead and like a double click on Molly. Kind of teased this a little bit, but we had a big release. This one I think is kind of fun because when we did the webinar, literally like 9 days ago, we didn't talk about this at all. Like, we were just waiting, like, oh, this is going to be coming really quickly after the webinar. Should we talk about it? Should we show what this is going to look like? And we decided that we just had so much to talk about that it got cut, and we kind of do it as a surprise release. And that's this commission tracking and reporting on the individual level. Brad, over to you. Like, what is this feature? Help bring this to life for us.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe just to go back, last Friday, we launched kind of the intro to this feature, which was on the advisor side, being able to actually log commission payments that you receive. So before that, you could like toggle commission status, basically saying whether you received it or not. But now you can actually log individual payments. If you're getting multiple payments from a supplier or from your host agency, you can like log those each as their own line item for an activity or a package, so you're tracking commission correctly. And then the commission statuses automatically update based on that. So you don't have to manually say like, oh, have I been paid? Is this thing overdue? Like, based on the due date and whether you've logged it, those things are already manually working for advisors. The thing that was missing was that you could only see that if you like clicked into a trip. You could see a summary of a commission per trip, or look at commission payments on an individual activity. But there wasn't a way to say like, oh, where are all of my, what do all of my commissions look like? How do I see all of my bookings, understand their status, and understand where I'm still missing commission, where I need to follow up with either my agency or suppliers, et cetera. So just yesterday, we turned on the ability for both independent advisors in Tern and for advisors who are connected with an agency in Tern to see their full list of bookings, and then to either, if you're an independent advisor, you have independent bookings, you can track commission payments from there as well. So it's a different way to kind of quickly go through that flow. And then if you have bookings associated with an agency, you can see the status of all those bookings from your agency. And then you also have one more thing. If you're associated with an agency, you can also see the status of all the payouts. So for any commission that your agency has received, you can see what split of that you're getting, and then like when that's expected to be paid out, or if it's already been paid out. So kind of a full suite here around tracking commission. There's another piece coming early next week, kind of with some more reporting pieces to that, like being able to break it down by supplier and have some like graphs over time. But looking forward to sharing more about that hopefully next Friday.
Yeah. And I think this is like so cool, because just to summarize that too, like what you were saying there is like, before we've had this kind of like commission status and a commission amount, but like for a long time, like call it a year and a half almost. But like it didn't work really well, right? Because like you'd like go into the activity and you'd be like, okay, I'm going to get $75 from the supplier, but it's like buried in the activity on the trip. And then once you got paid from your host agency, it wasn't connected at all. So you had to remember to like go back to the trip, find that activity and log it. And there's just so much friction. And there was actually no way to say I got paid $64 instead of my expected $75. So it's like kind of that like whole process just wasn't really covered. We obviously built a lot of that on the agency side, but what I think is so cool and what Brad, you just said, is like, even if your agency's not using it, right? Like you'll now be able to track your individual kind of financial records within Tern. You can see I was expecting $70. I got paid $68, and like I can actually log that payment and it'll automatically adjust the statuses, which is awesome. And then like the other super cool thing is if your agency is using Tern, like the payments just are there, right? Like you just can kind of see the status. It automatically syncs. There's none of this like manual process. I think it's so cool. And I remember there's like, we did this like hackathon when we did our December kind of get together, and Brian and I think Spencer on our team did this as like their project. Like, here's a commission dashboard. And I know this is, coming next week, but like one of the things they said that came out of that was like our data model for commissions and what these statuses and how we handle this is actually kind of tough to work with from a reporting perspective. And now we've shipped that. And so like, obviously something has changed in the data model. So like Molly, maybe coming over to you, like, what goes into a feature like this? Like what kind of things are happening behind the scenes? Like would love to have you bring that to life.
Yeah, I was not sick yet, but I was sweating when we launched this because I was a little bit nervous that we would like mess things up. And actually just really quick also why I'm so excited about this feature is ever since we started showing commission tracking for agencies, so many advisors were like, when am I going to get this? And so like we were finally delivering it. People were really excited. Some people, which we didn't recommend, were even like setting up an agency just to get access to it. So now definitely don't do that. There's no need.
Got your own.
Yeah, you've got your own now. And then whenever we talked to agency owners, they were like, wait a second, my agents need to be able to see this information too. Like this is like really important to me. So it's cool. It's like, it feels like it's, the other side of commission tracking is finally there. And again, just really excited, as Brad said, to launch the final piece, which is a similar view for reporting next week. And yeah, so going into like migrating all of this and how we launch things, as Brad said, on Friday, we did this core foundational change to how commission statuses work. And as he mentioned, it was previously, I think there was like 5 or 6 manual statuses. 3 of them, honestly, all just meant that a payment was upcoming. I'm not sure the original context for why there were 3 of 3. It was like waiting, anyways. And then there was overdue, there was paid. And so we wanted to get rid of those manual statuses, but even though they weren't being used that much, people were sometimes using them. So not only did we have to like actually just transition things and improve the way the product worked, we had to think about not losing that data. And so when we ran these things, we had to basically move a bunch of bookings that had a paid commission status to booked. We had to then like backfill the expected commission amount as the amount received with the commission percentage taken into account. We didn't always have an expected date, so we didn't know exactly what date to mark as like when you received the commission payment, which was important for our data model. It's a required field. So we had to backfill it as like the current date. And I actually just emailed like 30, 40 advisors who had impacted activities just to let them know exactly which ones, if they wanted to adjust that receive date for their own reporting purposes. So there was a lot involved just to make sure people hopefully didn't really notice, or if they did notice, they were like, oh, cool. Like I can see this in a different way now. And I mean, we really didn't hear a peep of like confusion or negative issues with it, which was really was a relief. And that foundation then allowed us to launch the commission tracking dashboard, which was kind of the payoff for all of that. So yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking at first, but all went really smoothly.
It's like so cool. And I think just a testament to the work that like the whole team, but like a particular shout out in this case, like the engineering team that like goes into actually making these data migrations possible. I was trying to think about like an analogy, Molly, as you were going through this, and like I'm going to come back to it. I've used it before, but it's like it's almost like you're driving a semi truck down a highway, right? Like 80 miles an hour or whatever the speed limit is, but in Michigan, it feels like they go 80 miles an hour. And you're like, we need to like do an oil change. while the car is running, right? And it's like, you got people like coming under and they're changing the oil and trying to make sure that the oil is still in there while the bad oil is coming out. I don't know, this is a bad example, but like that's what's happening, right? I mean, people are literally like loading and using Tern to like log commissions at the instant that the data is being migrated into this new format, and like the work that goes into making that happen in a way that nobody even knows that like this changed, or if they do, it's like, oh cool, like better formatting, like is such a testament to just like this incredible engineering team that we have, right? And I think it's like really special that we're able to like launch these things, and like in the grand scheme of things, it took us maybe like a couple weeks to build out this kind of entire feature set to give advisors their true dashboard into like what's going to actually happen in their business, what their financial picture looks like, getting rid of this like, in hindsight, it's silly, right? Like, oh, like, yeah, advisors are going to log into every single activity across every single one of their trips and like manually keep track of whether this commission is like paid or expected or like, it's just like not how it works, right? But now with this intelligent data-driven approach, it's really cool. So, Brad, anything you want to add to like that process, or any better analogies that you can offer on?
I think your analogy was perfect. And for folks who aren't watching, there was also a lot of visualizing with the hands of the semi oil change. Nailed it.
Yeah, watch on YouTube for lots of flailing hand gestures. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing on my mind is just like, I think this is just also a good example of like how much we've learned since we originally shipped the commission features to like how money flows in the real world. It was like, oh yeah, you have expected commission and eventually market is paid, but we know it's a lot messier than that. You can get like multiple payments. There's like the money could be coming from your host, or like you could be logging it yourself. Lots of layers there. And I think we're probably going to have to go through something similar eventually with like payments on activities and packages. Like we know a highly requested thing is like being able to actually say like what day like something was actually marked as paid for a payment that you've received. And when we originally worked on this, we're like, oh yeah, just mark it as paid, like it's a status. But like in the real world, when you're thinking about reporting, you want to be able to actually have a date, an amount, which might not be the expected amount. Like there's all these extra layers that like we maybe knew of early on, but just were like, oh, this is probably good enough to start. And now we're like going back and like, all right, now that we actually know how this works at scale, we'll clean this up and make it like actually reflect kind of like how the money's actually flowing in real life. Because it's one thing to say like to have our beautiful vision of how simple it can be in Tern, but if that's actually like impossible to track what's actually happening in your real life, like it does, we know that doesn't work. So like more to come there, but excited that we're learning these things now, especially before we get into groups. So as we're thinking more about like how the flow of money works with groups, we can get some of this stuff right from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think maybe like last thought on that, we've talked a lot on the podcast, right, around how our approach at Tern is like ship something and learn, right? Like we'd rather ship something quickly and learn from it from actual users as fast as possible than take, a really long time to try and get it right. But what that means inherently is that like we will learn a lot, and that sometimes you like do get the underlying data model wrong. And this is where a lot of organizations can get tripped up, and why you see a lot of more established organizations start to really slow down, because that migration process just becomes so painful. And so it's one of the reasons I get so excited about every one of these successful kind of behind the scenes, relatively like fast migration, where we said like, hey, that data model actually wasn't what we needed. And like, we're going to restructure that whole thing. And we're going to do that in a way that like didn't impact our customers at all. And it now enables this next generation of feature set to be built on top of it. And so it's I think, worth celebrating those totally behind the scenes changes that actually enable us to maintain that velocity and that pace and that caliber of kind of development. So I think that's really cool. Timeline. I think we talked a little bit about this, but the commission tracking live now, reporting next week. Molly, like anything you want to share on that?
Yeah, so commission tracking launched yesterday. It'll definitely be in my product update next week. I don't think anyone's noticed it yet that I'm aware of. So I've been looking at Facebook just to see. We often have detectives who like notice new features ahead of my updates. And then reporting, it's coming along. So I think it'll depend on how testing goes, but I'm expecting Monday or Tuesday next week for that piece to be live. And that will also, there'll be a version for agents to look at their reporting data, and then there'll be a version for advisors as well. if you're familiar with the agency tools for reporting, it will look very similar. Of course, there won't be like mine versus my whole agency and that sort of thing, but a similar version you'll see.
Exciting. All right, that was the kind of core thing. We're in the final section. We've got a lighter episode today, so we're going to move right into what are folks looking forward to next week. And Molly, we'll start with you. I'd imagine feeling better is hopefully one of those things.
Yeah, feeling better. Praying that my husband does not get sick. So far, so good. And I think I have to say two things. Brad, hopefully I'm not stealing one of yours.
Steal away. I'm excited if you're excited.
Okay. So the number one voted feature on our feedback tool is the ability to sort the trip board by trip dates. And I'm just really excited to see that done. I think people are going to be really happy. So that'll definitely ship sometime next week. And then task collaboration is kind of the next thing that we're working on. And I know that's just so essential for so many agencies and other folks that are trying to work with their VAs on trips, their assistants on trips. So that'll just be such an important part of the puzzle for collaboration and working on trips together. And I think it should launch next week. So if all goes well, and that'll be really fun to see.
Brad, what's on Molly stole? It sounds like maybe some of yours, but like anything else that you're excited for, or anything you want to plus there?
I mean, plus all of them. I don't know if we talk about this, but I don't know if people say plus in real life. We do this all the time in our Slack tool, but I'm always curious if folks know what plus means, or like, what are you saying?
They don't know. Yeah. I always catch myself. I was the one who told you this, Brad. We say plus because it's literally because of the way we got
to explain this now. So like, yeah, in our tool, we use this tool called Slack it's like kind of like an instant message, and it's like all of our communications do that. And we've got this like cool thing that actually came from Handshake. And the whole story was like back in the earliest days of Handshake, we had a ping pong table and we needed to keep ping pong scores. And so they created this Slack bot to like keep ping pong scores. But it actually turned into this like really cool cultural thing where anybody did something that was like really cool or above and beyond, or like the people wanted to celebrate, and they would do their name plus, right? And it would then like the little bot would chime in and be like, oh, like Molly has 100 points. And it was like just kind of a cool way to like give kudos and to be like, and then it evolved into like, oh, like plus that idea, just like in language. And so we've carried a lot of that over to Tern, and it's a great call out that is not a people are like, what is he okay, like what did he just say there? So
you've like
you hear us say plus
you've like said it in emails to customers before. You're like plus to that.
Okay, this is actually helpful. So now if anybody gets an email, you'll know exactly what that means. But it's like, what? That's funny. Okay.
For folks in the Facebook community to start plusing things. That's how you know we've really
started a trend.
Yeah.
That's right. So okay, new thing. Add a comment with a plus if you made it this far in the.
All right, back to the agenda.
Back on track.
I mean, all the things Molly mentioned. I think also just like continuing to power through groups. Honestly, it's going to sound ridiculous. Getting more sleep, because I'm not waking up in the middle of the night getting distracted thinking about groups and then unable to go back to bed. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is like having more decisions, like things nailed down. We're like, oh, this is going to work. So it's less things like constantly bouncing around in my head of just like, oh, we need to figure this out. Here's the 10 different options we could try. Like, so yeah, looking forward to that. And also just like, seems like we got a lot of stuff to ship next week. So excited to see all that go live.
I'm excited. I like, for some reason I must have missed with all the travel. I missed that the date thing is happening. So that's the sorting by date. It's pretty, that's fun. Never know. I learn things every one of these podcasts. So I'm excited for, I think, like two contrasting things. One is like Brad and I were kind of talking, and it sounds like we're going to do like a like broader team kind of deep dive into some of these group details and just like continue to wireframe and talk about that. And I like love that. It's like really fun for me to be able to get in the weeds of the product stuff. But then at the same time, I'm excited, like full week in the office, like to be able to start to zoom out and think about some of these longer term priorities as we think about some of the financial underpinning of features like groups, as we think about hiring and bringing on kind of new team members on kind of different teams. Like, what does that look like? And so it'll be a cool opportunity to like spend some time on the longer term, because things are moving so fast at Tern. We spend a lot of time in like what's happening next week and next month, zooming out and saying, okay, what's our next year look like and how are we planning and resourcing that? So that's on my list for next week. But probably most excited for like groups deep dive too, because that'll be fun.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to tell Molly yet. So breaking news on the podcast, Molly, we're going to do some wireframing together as the three of us to dig into some of these things. Hope you're excited about that.
Perfect.
Can't wait. All right. Well, that is all we have for this week. So thank you all so much for tuning in. As a reminder, for the 5th time, subscribe if you haven't already so you get notified about this. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone.